Hi, my name's Steve and welcome to my YouTube channel Mind Project. And the reason I'm making this video is to give people an insight into the things that happen to us in our life and how we can really change from the things that happen to us in our past. So I'm going to tell you my story. It's not to play, for everyone to feel sorry for me or be the victim, but to give you an idea of some of the things that goes on in their life. Some of you might resonate with that, and some of you might understand that change is absolutely possible. So I'm going to start really when I was very young. I was assaulted as a child when I was 10, which was a pretty traumatic experience. A year later, I was a keen fisherman. I used to go fishing all the time. I was about 11 years old. I think I bunked off of school, in all fairness. And I was sitting with a guy who'd been fishing. I'd been fishing with all day. I didn't have any bait or hooks and stuff. So he would, every time I lost a hook or a float, he would he'd help me out. He'd give me the hooks that I needed and the bait. And at the end of the day, whilst he was packing up, he just stood up and picked a pair of scissors out of his box and stabbed a woman in the throat right in front of me, and blood was pouring out of her neck. Quite traumatic experience. I remember running to the nearest pub. When I go in there, he was going mad because obviously I wasn't allowed in the pub. Called the police. Fortunately enough, they caught him, and luckily enough the lady survived, but that led to me being quite traumatized as a child. My school was pretty much after that point done and dusted. I had terrible issues. I never really fitted in with anybody at school. I didn't really get on with anybody. I was really naughty. The teachers couldn't handle me. My parents couldn't handle me, and pretty much I messed my whole school up. I picked up a few qualifications, but I was quite smart. But my whole school was it was an absolute mess, and so I ended up hanging around with the wrong people, getting involved in drugs, and that went on for a good few years. I didn't go to work. I was just an absolute nightmare. The people I was hanging around with, they were all getting out of prison, and I sort of aspired to be like them, really, to try and get respect from people. And so I got arrested several times for minor things, nothing silly. Obviously because I was messed up on drink and drugs, and I lost my first love. I still think about her now, but because of the person I was, people would make all sorts of stuff up about me, and that relationship pretty much finished when one of the people that used to play football with me told their parents I was selling guns and knives, which is a complete load of crap. But they believed it, and it broke my heart, and that sort of compounded the crap that I was going through in my life. I then met somebody else when I was 21. I had a child, and pretty much after my first child, she fell pregnant again, and unfortunately, while she was being born in the hospital, she died, and that was a real heartbreaking moment for me and for her. It was terrible having to have a funeral to bury your own child, and so that really compounded it even more. I became more heavily in drink and drugs, trying to escape, but what it did do is it sort of changed me a little bit, and I thought it was time for me to change, and I was unemployed at the time, and I ended up setting up a business. And with absolutely nothing at all, me and my best mate, we had a web design company. And after about 3 or 4 years of building it up to quite a substantial amount of money, I had a business client who I'd sold a website to and was working very closely with. And I'd built a really good business with my friend from nothing, and he basically he owed me quite a substantial amount of money. I don't know the exact figure, but it was around a couple of £100,000, and he was basically lying to me constantly. And didn't pay the money. His company went pop, and ultimately took my company with it. That then left my business partner and me to go our separate ways, and pretty much straight after that, the relationship with my first partner broke up, and she ran off with the local drug dealer, And I can remember finding that out on my birthday, which was quite hard to deal with, as you can imagine. From that, I basically met up with the guy who knocked me for all the money, and I'd set up another business with him, and that we built that up to roughly a business to about 450 people at its point. It was doing a couple of £1 million a year, and I trusted in him impeccably, but obviously I had a lot of issues with my past, and I was heavily earning lots of money, and I was heavily doing a lot of cocaine and drink, and I was basically doing about £1,000 a week sometimes, on this. And I look back at, but it was my way of escaping from all the traumas that I'd had in the past. And what ended up happening is that I trusted him impeccably, and I appointed all different people for different jobs, and what I didn't realise is that ultimately they were just basically ripping everyone off, and at the end of it, they all basically conspired. My business partner just walked in one day and said, "I'm leaving." He left me with massive debts with all sorts of people, totaled about, best part of about £300,000 or £400,000. And then I was subjected to by the people who created the problem. I spent probably the next 2.5 years being assaulted online, massively, with people writing stuff about me and about my family, about my father. And I did the integral thing, and I basically had saved up quite a lot of money really to buy my house with my new partner, and I had a little boy, and when he came along, that was the point I decided to make changes, and I went and done counselling, and within a very short period of time I managed to get off the drugs. I stopped drinking, I stopped gambling, I pretty much stopped smoking, and I just got to the point where I'd cracked it. And then obviously that's when the company went tits up, left me with loads of problems, and because obviously the sort of person I was, I basically was left on my own, having to deal with a government investigation, which went on for 2.5 years. And I also found out later on that there was fraud taken against the customers of the business that probably totaled about £2 million. I had people that I worked with, that I looked after, I sent on holidays, I took them to expensive spas, and really supported them when they were in desperate need and support, only to find out that they'd been stealing money from me as well. The police contacted me, and it totaled around about £900,000. But by this time, I'd pretty much lost all my personal wealth that I had accumulated. I remember one letter I got from a customer who had been a cleaner from Romania, and she had been pretty much taken to the cleaners for about £10,000, and I read the letter. It was about 6 pages long, and it broke my heart so badly. I felt so bad, and I felt I was responsible, and I ended up giving her that money out of my own pocket. And so all the wealth I'd accumulated I was using to basically clear up all the mess. The liquidator also had me for about £25,000, and I then managed to keep some of the staff, and spent the next 2 years or so trying to keep the business afloat, and ultimately it didn't happen, and I've been supporting myself with all my money, and pretty much until it had all gone. In the meantime, I'd had 2 spine operations, and at that point, after my operation, I realised that the one member of staff that I'd got working for me that was left had also been stealing money and having the money paid into his bank account, and it just got to the point where I just literally had enough. I'd literally had enough. I'd been ripped off by literally everybody and money stolen from me, and I just decided enough was enough. I'd spent a good few years developing a bit of software, and the guy who was working with me went and got another job, and so I was pretty much left on my own after supporting all these people for so long, and I felt, really, I'd had enough. And I was due another spine operation in the January, and my other half at the time said to me to knock it on the head and not to worry, because I've got her and the boy, and I thought it was the best thing to do and try and forge out a new life for myself. And whilst I was convalescing from the spine operation, she went to see her mother, and her mother bought her a house, and she come back and said, I'm moving to another country and I'm taking your son. And that was the last thing I had left in my life, and that had left me as well. So I was absolutely distraught. Funnily enough, that was on my birthday as well. So obviously I hadn't learned from, it was actually 7 years to the day. Exactly 7 years to the day, the same thing happened from my first relationship to my second relationship. And so I was left pretty much bankrupt, totally bankrupt. And I decided that I didn't want to carry on. And I really didn't want to carry on. And so I went to a certain part of the train track near me, and I planned it all out. I'd even written the letter in my mind to all the people, thanking them for all the pain that they put me through, and I was pretty much ready to do it. And on the day that I decided to do it, I don't know what happened, but I went round to my mum's and I told her that I didn't want to carry on. I just didn't want to be here anymore, and I shouldn't have done that. Broke her heart, and she basically, you know, she was obviously feeling my pain too. But that day, I went onto the internet and I found an article, and it was all about change and about feelings. And I read the article and then realised that actually it was the way I was feeling that was making me want to end it all. And so for some reason at that point I just decided not to do it, and that's when my journey of change started. And I realised that all it was the past, all my past experience had compounded into this one event, and I believed that actually that I could change the way I felt, and if I could change the way I felt, then I wouldn't want to carry on, or I would want to carry on, and that's where the journey started. And so here I am now, a year later. I'm totally free of drink and drugs. I have the odd pint. I've changed my diet. I've lost weight. I've spent last year studying everything about neuroscience, about how the mind works, how the brain works, why we feel, why we think, how we create our reality. And what's been amazing for me is that there's if you put your focus and attention into actually really wanting to achieve something, you really can. And I'm hoping this will resonate and inspire people to understand that no matter what really happens in your life, you can actually really change if you really want to. And I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And so what I'm going to be doing is I've launched the Mind Project. The Mind Project is going to be set up to basically help people that are going through or want to change or are not happy or feel suicidal or have had experiences in their life that they can't cope with, or they don't know how to move from, they don't know how to move forward. All of these things that challenge us in our lives. And I think the Mind Project will be really good. So I intend to share my journey, how I've been able to move out, change my whole life, change my perspective, be the happiest I've ever been in just a very short period of time, and by sharing the resources and the knowledge from not just myself but from other incredible people who have studied this, and hopefully with a bit of science, a bit of neuroscience, a bit of neurodevelopment, a bit of spirituality and a bit of faith, that you will be able to follow my journey, and this will assist you in yours, and hopefully that you can move out of that nasty place that you possibly might be in, or even if it's just something small that you might want to change in your life. Even the smallest things sometimes can cripple us, and we get stuck. So here we go. So that's it, pretty much my story. It's been really difficult to actually bring up the courage to do this and actually tell my story. So I'm going to put all my effort into the Mind Project. Thank you for watching, and I hope this will help one or two of you in your life moving forward. Peace.